Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
Into the GSMC Football Podcast, right here, baby, Draft Day. Yes, sir, Draft Day, baby, right here on the GSMC Podcast Network. We're gonna do a little special show for you today. So, what we're gonna do in this show is I'm gonna start the show doing 3 team reviews. I'm just gonna do the rest of the AFC East because I told you guys in my last show I want to give you guys first round coverage. So what I'm gonna do for the first 3 segments is I'm going to talk about, like I said, the 3 AFC East teams left: New England, Miami, and New York. And after that, what we're going to do is, you won't notice it obviously during this podcast, but I will have stopped recording and I will then watch the entire first round of the NFL draft. And then after that, we will end the show and analyzing every pick from 1 to 32, every 10, 11 picks for the last three segments of the show. And that's how I'm going to do this show today, to give y'all that NFL coverage that y'all have been looking for. So obviously, you know, if you're listening to this podcast, you don't really care for the AFC East, you could obviously skip to the back end of the show and watch the NFL draft review. I give them picks and selections that are made, any trades during that pick selection and everything. So we're going to do that today. It's a little different, a little unorthodox, but I want to be able to watch the NFL draft without any distractions or being focused on something else. And like I said, I want to give you guys full analysis on the draft, what happens this year. So that's how we're going to do the show. And so it's going to be a very interesting, long night for me, but I grind every day, so it is what it is. But yeah, so that's what we're doing today and everything. So might as well get into it right now with the AFC East, and we're going to do the Miami Dolphins to start off. Obviously, I'm doing Miami because they are a very big player in this year's draft. Obviously, by this end of the second half of this show, you'll know who they've selected for their team. So obviously this review will be based upon what they have now and then based on what they could do during the draft and etc. So, obviously the Miami Dolphins last year traded all their best players away, gave away all their talent. Clearly, they did it because there was a plan. There was a plan in place when they hired Brian Flores from the New England Patriots, former defensive coordinator, that they wanted to accumulate a lot of picks and free up a lot of cap space. And so with all that, they've now used that. And obviously, the season obviously was not to be expected, even though they played very well at the end of the season. They found some guys that, like Devontae Parker, finally became the number 1 receiver they wanted him to become. Ryan Fitzpatrick still shows he's a very great veteran quarterback. You just look at a couple of pieces and you're like, okay, we like these guys and we can do something with this. So now, the season happened. Obviously, they're very much responsible. People think they're responsible for ending the New England franchise, beating the New England Patriots at home in Foxborough on the last week of the regular season, knocking New England down to number 3 seed, which eventually ended up them losing to the Tennessee Titans in the first round of the playoffs in the wild card. And so they've made some waves. They made some waves and they've made some moves. If you're talking about from a free agency standpoint, they were very active on the defensive side of free agency, getting Agba, Shaq Lawson, Kyle Van Noy. They really were active. They signed Byron Jones, the big free agent pickup. I mean, they were very active in the free agency defensively, bringing a lot of New England players and a lot of players that fit the system that Brian Flores wants to run defensively and what he did when he was in New England. So obviously you can see that they're trying to build up the defensive side of the ball with the money. And then a lot of people expect in the NFL draft for them to build up the offensive side. Now, obviously, the big story with Miami is this. They have 3 first-round picks right now currently. Now, they have been trying to wheel and deal. There's plenty of rumors out there about them trying to get up to 3 and then maybe try to use 3 and 5 to get 1 and, just all of that. Because obviously there are people who are saying they're targeting a tackle and they're targeting, obviously, the quarterback. The quarterback situation is what we're going to focus on right now because a lot of people are wondering, who did they go with? Do they go with Tua? Do they go with Herbert? Or do they take the chance on Jordan Love? obviously, I think Miami fans, from the consensus from Miami fans, all the Miami fans want Miami to take Tua Tagovailoa and be the quarterback and just hope he stays healthy. I think Miami fans just look at the fact that when they've tried project quarterbacks, that hasn't worked. When they passed up on a guy who was hurt and thought they would never be healthy, it was Drew Brees, and you saw what happened. I think Miami fans just feel like we can't be scared off. If he's the best and one of the most talented players in this draft, you need to take him because we need a guy for the future. And, it's a very big debate, in Miami land. What are they going to do with the 5th pick? There's so many rumors. Even Jeff Darlington had to come out and say, after everything I've heard, I don't know what's going to happen with Miami. I don't know. You're hearing they could trade this, they could go up for him, they could draft him. It just kind of makes you just like, what are we actually doing right now? What is the plan? What is the initiative? What do we want? What are we reaching for? What are we traveling for? And, like I said, Miami has the ability to control this entire draft. They really realistically can get any player they want. In the next 2 drafts after this, they have 5 first-round picks. So, that's something that clearly, they have ammunition. So if they really wanted certain players, even in future drafts, they could probably get them. So I think that's one reason why I think a lot of people think that Miami should go ahead, take those chances, because you have the ammunition to take the chance. You have the ammunition to make that move and not be scared off by the fact that, something's going on. You can go ahead and just take the chance that you need to take to put the team in position to be successful. I think that's probably one of the most important things moving forward, just for them. You have the ammunition to take a chance on Tua. And if somehow you knew Tua's not going to be the guy or he can't stay healthy, you have the ammunition to probably trade up and try to get a guy like Trevor Lawrence, if possible. Depending on whoever the worst team is next year. So it's going to be very important to me to see what happens and to see what actually ends up being the case. I think it's just going to be something that you have to look at and you have to see what actually ends up being what it is. I think that's one of the things that make things very difficult for anybody in the position of Miami is so many assets, but what to do with them, because you're not expecting to draft 14 rookies. You don't want 14 rookies on your roster. I think they'll probably get it cut down maybe 10 rookies, maybe 10 to, I would say between 8 to 10 rookies I think Miami's going to end up drafting in this draft in total. But I think they're definitely going to have at least 2 first-round picks in today's in the NFL draft. And obviously, when me and Ethan go back on Monday, we'll probably discuss more of the NFL draft as a whole and who have the best draft classes and etc. And Miami should have one of the better draft classes just because of the fact that they have all the ammunition and picks, especially in the top 3 rounds, having a lot of picks early, so they can, like I said, get the guys they want early when the talent is a little bit higher in the earlier parts of the draft, and still be able to pick up guys that they really enjoy and like moving forward and becoming what they want to be. So I think that's something that, it's going to be an interesting situation, like I said, for Miami moving forward, to see what they're going to do, to see what the choices are going to be made, to see what they think is the right decision. Cause it clearly shows. It shows itself clearly. And I think you can't hate on it. You can't dislike it. You just gotta come out there and contribute and play at a high level. If you're the Miami Dolphins, on every aspect of your organization, on every coach, cause a lot of Miami fans are riding on this. A lot of Miami fans are tired of being that franchise. Cause here's the thing. Miami has a storied franchise, but during the 2000s and 2010s, it's not been the best. So it's been a while since Miami fans have felt like they've had true success. And they feel like if they can get it right tonight, and they get to a fans think that they're going to move forward, but they could get Herbert. I don't know. It just depends on how you view them. It depends on how you see them and what you think of them moving forward. I've seen these guys in college. Tua has always played outstanding. Burrow has played out his games. Could they go and take maybe a tackle potentially? Andrew Thomas is in there. Worf, any of those guys. Could they, Jarek Willis? Could they go in that direction? We'll have to really see what Miami decides to do. Obviously, there's going to be trades that happen during this draft that obviously I'll still also talk about when we get to that part of the show, second half of the show. And it's just going to really be an interesting situation just to see what happens, to see how everything turns out and to see how the draft unfolds tonight, day one, and then throughout the rest of the draft, like I said, with me and Ethan do our recap show on Monday and seeing how things just really just turn into what they're going to turn into. So I think that's going to be the exciting part of this entire process and watching this entire draft. But that was your Miami Dolphins season in review. Coming up next, we're going to talk about the New York Jets. We're going to talk about the Jets, the drama, Sam Darnold, Gase, everybody. Also talk about who they might try to get with their pick tonight in the NFL draft. And obviously, like I said, we'll discuss it when we get to that point. But right here on the podcast, stay tuned.
You really can't underestimate the importance of having the right creative work for your brand or your product. Whether it's a logo, a website, a book cover, or an ad campaign, you really need a quality design to make that big difference pop and deliver your overall engagement and success in a competitive market. That's where Design Crowd comes in. Design Crowd has over 750,000 designers from Sydney to San Francisco ready to help you with awesome creative ideas. They make crowdsourcing work for you. So if you need a logo or you're working on your creative branding, you can go to designcrowd.com and post a brief describing the design you need. And then within about 2 to 7 days, you'll receive up to over 100 different designs from designers around the world. Then you pick the best design and approve payment to the designer. So you're only paying for the design that you want. It takes a lot of the guesswork out of freelancing and out of crowdsourcing. And you don't have to be a huge company like Harvard Business School to use Design Crowd, although they have used it as well. You can start a project on Design Crowd for as little as $99. And if you go right now to designcrowd.com/health and wellness or enter the promo code health and wellness on their website, then our health and wellness listeners will receive up to $150 off of your design project. That's designcrowd.com/health and wellness or entering that promo code health and wellness.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's GSMCpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Football Podcast. Obviously, last segment I told y'all how this show is going to go, as the first 3 segments you will hear will be before the NFL draft, and the last 3 segments you hear will be after the NFL draft, where I can do analysis and my thoughts on everything that happened during the draft tonight. But we also talked about the Miami Dolphins season in review last segment. We talked about where Miami is, how they control the draft, how they're just in a position where they really can take advantage of what they have and the assets that they have available to them, and put this team in a direction moving forward where fans can really get behind it and support it, as Miami fans are ready to finally be a team that can maybe be respectable for years and years to come. And a lot of Miami fans want Miami to go ahead and take Tua and let him be the franchise quarterback, and they're going to pray and hope that he will survive and he will be able to retain and be able to keep up with the fact that he could stay healthy and be able to play meaningful games for the Miami Dolphins and potentially lead them in the future to success. But now we're going to get into our next AFC East team, the New York Jets. 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 Okay, yes sir. Okay. So, here's the thing about the Jets. Here's the thing about the Jets. The Jets are a team, obviously last year, Sam Darnold had mono. Not even a physical injury, a mono. he was out for a few games. They were absolutely hot tamales without him. They could not score offensively. Their defenses was good, but offensively they couldn't do anything. Then Sam Darnold came back. They upset the Dallas Cowboys. They finished, I believe, 6-3, 6-2 when Sam Darnold played down the stretch. So clearly, if you see that, you're thinking to yourself, okay, so that we don't know what the Jets could have been if Sam Darnold played every game. Coming back for another year with Adam Gase, who's been under some scrutiny. Him and Le'Veon Bell doesn't have the best relationship. He got the GM fired last year. A lot of fans in New York are not sure about him, so they're kind of like, listen, if things get messed up or something, doesn't work, we're going to sit there and we're going to listen, this isn't working. So you could maybe say this is a make or break year for Adam Gase coming up. Now, obviously this offseason, the New York Jets, they have, they're a team that, has plenty of potential to be great. They do. They have potential to be great. They have potential to be a team that is a team to be reckoned with. A team you don't want to sleep on. A team you don't want to think, is not good enough. Remember, with Brady gone, this all has opened up the entire division of the AFC East. And the Jets could be a team that, if they make a jump this year, they could end up being the AFC East champions. I'm just saying. Now, this offseason, they added a lot of guys, a lot of depth. They added Rashad Perriman, deep threat for Sam Darnold. They're probably going to draft the receiver in this draft, which we'll talk about soon a little bit. Added some offensive linemen, George Fant, Connor McGrove, Greg Van Ruten, Alex Lewis. They added depth. They brought back Brian Poole, Neville Hewitt, other guys like that. I mean, listen, they didn't have a splashy free agency class. They didn't bring back a splashy class at all. But they added depth to their lineup, and then they're going to continue to add pieces to their team when the draft comes. Now, obviously, in the draft, they're looking at a guy like there's the connections. They could get Jerry Jeudy. They could get connections like Henry Ruggs. They're very all over the place. There's not a definitive place they're going with their draft. Like I said, it's very all over the place. There's not a definitive place. They're trying to figure out what's the best move. Obviously, because wide receiver is a big need for them. I think they'll be fine moving forward. I think the Jets first. Listen, we know about the Le'Veon Bell drama. They have to get on the same page. Him and Adam Gase. Gase either needs to commit and say, you are a running back and we will use you as such and put you in the best position. Now, obviously, if Le'Veon Bell was out of shape, the Le'Veon Bell needs to take responsibility and get himself back into game shape, getting back to where he was. But Gase also needs to be all in on somebody, because you can't just say, I'm not even sure if I want you here, but you expect him to go out there and bust his butt for you. Hey, you might want to call this a shocking report. But don't be surprised if Le'Veon Bell's name might be even tossed around in today's draft. I don't think he'll be traded. I don't think there's much of a chance, but you never know. Maybe if Adam Gase really wants him gone and Joe Douglas is okay with it, maybe he'll sit there and be like, all right, I mean, if you want him gone, we'll see what we can get for him. So I think that's just going to be the biggest thing. That's going to be the biggest thing for me. I think that you have to see and you have to look at with this draft for the Jets is, obviously the Jets have like I say, improving the offensive line is a big deal. Darnold was under a lot of duress. You got to get the offensive line straight. Improve your weapons around you. If Le'Veon can get back to Le'Veon Bell, overall the New York Jets offense looks really good on paper. So defensively, they've always been good, but you still got to make some stuff happen. They used to have one of the best defensive lines in the division. A lot of guys like Leonard Williams and Wilkerson and Muhammad have left, but they still have talent up front. They have good linebackers, you know what I'm saying? They have a very solid team. I'm not sure if anybody's thinking Super Bowl, but a solid team nonetheless. At the end of the day, you're just trying to add positions Now, obviously, the big news also is Jamal Adams. He's been a guy who's been in the news a lot because he's been outspoken about the Jets, about, listen, either give me a contract or trade me. And Joe Douglas did say they want to give him a long-term deal. Some people think maybe potentially with some of the holes they have on the roster, trading him wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, but I think you also don't want to let go of one of your best players on your team, if not the best player on your team, out of his contract or out of the team in general, because you got to make sure you get enough compensation back. That's why usually you make these trades before the draft. That's why if the draft, even though he could potentially be traded after the draft, you would think it would have to happen beforehand. And if he's really serious about bringing him back, I think that he should definitely bring back. He should definitely bring back him. He really should. And I think that's something that I think was going to be very interesting to me moving forward. It's going to be interesting to me seeing if they do go ahead and do anything. I don't think they're going to do any trading up or trading down in the draft. I think they're just going to pretty much be pretty normal. I think they're confident where they are. They can get a receiver they want, because that's usually around where people think receivers are going to start coming off the board. And with this wide receiver class, I mean, I'm sure they can, like I said, get the guy they want. Like I said, it's just, you gotta make sure the star players you have are not disgruntled. Everybody's on the same page, and if you do that, the Jets, like I said, with the division up for grabs, they could be the team that could be competing for the AFC East crown next year. Realistically, they could compete for the AFC East crown, and they can maybe make the AFC East and make the playoffs for the first time since, I believe, the last time they made the playoffs was obviously with Rex Ryan and Mark Sanchez, I believe. So, it's been a few years for the Jets since they've had that type of success. And so if they really want to sit here and really do what they got to do to continue that and to bring that success back, and for Gase to get some of the pressure alleviated off of him by fans and just the organization and other people who may be critical of him, taking advantage of this division, building the team up the way it needs to be built is the best way to get this team where they want to go and for them to be successful. And if him and Joe Douglas can get along and have a common mindset of what they want to do with the team, the Jets may be in good hands, because one of the things they have that a lot of teams may still be open and trying to find is they have their franchise quarterback, and all you got to do is put what you need to put around him, give him a good defense, and then you'll sit there and be like, why can't the Jets make the playoffs? Why can't the Jets be good? That's going to be the big thing. That's why I think AFC East is going to be probably one of the most interesting divisions next year in the entire NFL, just because of that fact. So it will definitely be a very interesting situation to see what actually ends up happening. But coming up next, we're going to talk about the New England Patriots. Their season in review, obviously, a lot of big things have happened with New England. We'll talk about all that and more right here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
I want to talk to you guys about this amazing product I've been using lately called Hydrant. If you're like me and you want to kick the coffee habit, but you're worried about your energy levels depleting, to avoid the morning sluggishness and that midday slump, you need to make sure you're hydrated. It's super important. And that's where I've been using Hydrant. And for 25% off your first order, you can go to drinkhydrant.com and enter promo code GSMC at checkout. Hydrant is basically flavored electrolyte packets you mix directly into your water to make hydrating your body easy and delicious. And what I love about Hydrant, it's backed by research. The formula was developed by Oxford scientists to provide perfectly balanced, efficient hydration. Again, that's drinkhydrant.com and enter promo code GSMC for 25% off your first order. Another really cool thing about Hydrant, there's no synthetic colors or artificial sweeteners. The formula is vegan and you can choose between 3 different flavors or a variety pack. So for all my vegan friendly fellows out there, this one's for you. Again, this is drinkhydrant.com and enter promo code GSMC.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Football Podcast. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Where we last segment, we talked about the New York Jets. Them Jets. Jets. Yes, sir. We talked about Sam Darnold. We talked about Adam Gase. We talked about the state of the New York Jets franchise going into the draft tonight. Obviously, I'm expecting them to pick a receiver. So hopefully the second half of the show, I will be discussing them picking a receiver. But if not, we'll talk about whoever they draft to. We talked about, obviously, you know, them working those issues out with Le'Veon Bell, making sure they can get back on the same page because they do have a good running back in Le'Veon Bell. And also, just seeing what happens with Jamal Adams. You don't want to trade away a player like Jamal Adams, so you want to make sure that you and him are on the same page again also. So you got to make sure you're doing what you do and put everybody in position to be successful at the end of the day. If I'm Adam Gase and Joe Douglas of the New York Jets and trying to put this team in their best direction to potentially take advantage of a very wide open AFC East this year and potentially make the playoffs for the first time since I believe 2013 or 14. And now we'll finish up our AFC East teams before we get into the draft and I take my break so we can talk about the draft. Now we're going to talk about the New England Patriots. The dynasty. Over. It's over. New England is done. Now, when we say done, listen, I'm not saying they're about to become Cleveland for the next 20 years and be trash. That's not what I'm saying. Okay? They are. I think with Bill Belichick, they'll still be a relevant team. Now, they could be tanking next year, which I'll get into in a minute, but obviously, you know the big news. Tom Brady leaves. The guy who single-handedly changed the fortunes of this franchise and brought them all the championships that they have. New England. He's gone. He went to Tampa Bay. He won. So now Bill Belichick has to start over at the quarterback position. People wonder what New England's going to do. Right now, currently, Jarrett Stidham is the guy who's listed to be the starter. A lot of people are having a very hard time believing Jarrett Stidham is going to be the starting quarterback for the New England Patriots next year. Because I think a lot of people just don't view Jarrett Stidham as a starting quarterback in this league. You've heard people say, obviously a lot of New England teammates come out and say that they trust and they believe in Jarrett Stidham. But obviously that's what they're supposed to say. Plus, we've really never seen this guy play in this regard, so we don't know. Obviously, if he's going to be the number one guy, he'll get all the reps, he'll get the preparation, the training, the coaching. He could be way better and more improved by the time week one comes around. So we can't sit here and rule it out, but I understand why people are very hesitant. They lost a lot of players. They've lost offensive linemen. They've lost linebackers. They've lost corners. They've lost safeties. They've lost defensive linemen. They've lost a lot this offseason. In a way, it does feel like, could New England potentially be tanking to potentially maybe get in the Trevor Lawrence sweepstakes? We don't know. We really don't know what New England is going to be this year. I mean, we don't know. Because you don't want to sit here and I think that's what I think is like super interesting to me. What is their plan moving forward? What is the New England plan? Because obviously Belichick's never been a guy who's at least, or what New England wants to do. It's been very methodical what he does. So you really don't know what Bill Belichick is thinking. You don't know what Bill Belichick wants to do. And I think we'll have to see. Now, obviously, for news people, Gronkowski was traded to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on Wednesday. And, it brought up an interesting topic of, they said that Gronk retired for injuries. But then I read a report saying that he retired because he was not healthy and also because he did not want to play in that New England system, in that New England culture anymore. Gronkowski even came out and said, yeah, New England's a tough place to play. Because of his culture and his style, it's very rigid. It's hard on you. It can wear on you if you're not tough. And I think that's why some people think Gronk was never going to come back as long as Belichick was the coach. Even though he wanted to come back. So now he's in Tampa Bay, and the only person really left that we really recognized as the New England Patriot for so long was Julian Edelman. I believe at this point, I'm not 100% sure, but I believe, unless it's one of the McCourty brothers, actually Devin McCourty, because he was there before Jason was, but, Julian Edelman could be the longest tenured New England Patriot right now. And they really haven't made any moves in free agency. They're probably going to make moves in the draft. There's a potential chance if Tua slips, they said they might trade up for Tua, which would definitely shake some things up if they were able to get Tua. And et cetera. Just moving forward, thinking forward. And just seeing and knowing, those things. It's going to be very interesting to me to see what actually ends up happening with New England and their franchise moving forward, because it's a big question. Because you really don't know. You really don't know. You don't know what they're going to do. You don't know what they're thinking. You don't know what the move is. You don't know what their plan is. You just gotta wait and see. New England still has some talent, though. They still have Stephon Gilmore. They still have James White. Like I said, Edelman. A couple of their Pro Bowl linemen. They still have some guys who have played there for some years that are still playing now. So it's not like they're completely depleted, but it's just they have lost a lot of people. And it's not like they've been very active in replacing these people either. Which I think why, again, people feel like the NFC, not the NFC, the AFC East is so wide open. It's so, it's just very interesting to me. It's going to be, for me, interesting to see what happens. We're going to have to see what New England actually ends up doing. They're probably going to be one of the most intriguing teams. It'll be interesting who they take tonight. It'll be interesting just to see their entire draft class, and then just to see what they do going forward. They're the biggest mystery of the league to me. Because some people still think New England might have a winning season. Because New England's New England. Why would they ever lose? It may not be as great as it has been, but they're going to still find a way to win. Will Jarrett Stidham shock us all and maybe potentially be the quarterback that nobody thought he could be? Could New England draft the quarterback late round and be like, oh, well maybe he could become something? All of those are questions that people want answers to, and people are going to wonder about for weeks. So it's going to be very interesting to actually see what actually ends up happening and to see where New England actually ends up going with their selections. But, so, as I've told you before, at the end of this segment, obviously, next segment we're going to talk about the first 10 picks of the NFL draft. All that right here and more on the podcast.
You really can't underestimate the importance of having the right creative work for your brand or your product. Whether it's a logo, a website, a book cover, or an ad campaign, you really need a quality design to make that big difference pop and deliver your overall engagement and success in a competitive market. That's where Design Crowd comes in. Design Crowd has over 750,000 designers from Sydney to San Francisco ready to help you with awesome creative ideas. They make crowdsourcing work for you. So if you need a logo or you're working on your creative branding, you can go to designcrowd.com and post a brief describing the design you need. And then within about 2 to 7 days, you'll receive up to over 100 different designs from designers around the world. Then you pick the best design and approve payment to the designer. So you're only paying for the design that you want. It takes a lot of the guesswork out of freelancing and out of crowdsourcing. And you don't have to be a huge company like Harvard Business School to use Design Crowd, although they have used it as well. You can start a project on Design Crowd for as little as $99. And if you go right now to designcrowd.com/health and wellness or enter the promo code health and wellness on their website, then our health and wellness listeners will receive up to $150 off of your design project. That's designcrowd.com/health and wellness or entering that promo code health and wellness.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts. Past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Welcome back to the GSMC Football Podcast, baby. Yes, sir. The first round of the draft has concluded. And now I'm going to give you analysts' opinion from me on all of the picks. We're going to do 1 through 10, then we're going to do the next 10, 11, then we're going to do the last 10, 11 to finish out the show. Obviously, if you were, like I told you earlier in the show, I was going to record this portion of our podcast after the draft so I can give y'all analysis of all the picks, in my opinion, on every pick for every team and going forward and moving forward. But so, obviously, if you missed our last segment, we talked about the New England Patriots. We basically reviewed the entire AFC East. Obviously, New England did not draft tonight. The Jets drafted one person, and the Miami Dolphins picked 3 players. So obviously we'll talk about those picks when we get to those picks, obviously coming up and moving forward. But so, now we're going to get to the NFL draft, and we're going to break down the picks, my thoughts on the picks, and, you know, just what looks like short outlooks on every player for me, and just what it looks like moving forward. So with the first overall draft pick in this year's NFL draft, the Bengals selected the guy we all expected them to select, Joe Burrow. Obviously, this was a very no-brainer pick for the Bengals. They needed a quarterback. They needed a new franchise guy. Andy Dalton's era is over. They needed a new cornerstone, and they got their guy. They got Andy Dalton. They believe Andy Dalton can be the guy for them moving in long term. You know, Andy Dalton, I think, is going to be interesting because a lot of people worry about this pick because the Bengals have not been historically known as a great franchise, and you know they are currently the worst team right now in the league. So people are worried, is the Cincinnati going to put him in the best position for him to be successful in that system so they can contribute and be a good team later on down the road? I think that's something we're going to have to see. And then we're also, one of the biggest questions on Burrow is his arm strength. People wonder, in that division in cold weather, he does not have one of the strongest arms in this draft, but he has a decent arm, and they wonder if that's going to be good enough for him to be still able to make the on-time perfect throws that he needs to make for them to be successful moving forward with Joe Burrow. With number 2, they went with the guy we all expected, Chase Young. Chase Young is a guy who, obviously he's known as a generational defensive end player. A guy who is expected to come in for Washington right away with Montez Sweat on the other side and get after the passer. The Redskins have now got them 2 bookends that can, get after a quarterback and really just dominate on the defensive line and create havoc. Which, again, Washington's defense is really getting built out to be a very solid defense. I expect them to be very solid defensively, which is going to keep them in a lot of games. And then we'll see the development of Dwayne Haskins, because if they can win those games, Dwayne Haskins is your franchise quarterback. If they lose those games and he plays bad, he will be replaced. So that's going to be obviously a big deal. Obviously, what's going to happen, At number 3, the Detroit Lions selected Jeff Okudah, Ohio State, solidified as the best corner in this draft, shutdown corner in this draft. Lions needed a guy to replace Darius Slay. Obviously, drafting Jeff Okudah gives them that shutdown corner to replace Darius Slay. He's a guy who, Ohio State, he was shutting down everybody. He played well against all the best receivers in the game. And, with that being known, he's really a great guy, great player. He's played very well. And that's what you really look at and expect going forward, that you see a lot of talent here with what you see with Jeff Okudah. Obviously, like I said, they're expecting him to be the guy down the field. Obviously going against Kenny Golladay and Marvin Jones Jr. could also be very exciting. Obviously, rookie corners, you may not know exactly how they're going to particularly do in their first season, but you do know that they're going to come in there and they're going to compete and then learn on the fly and could become a number 1 corner by the season's end. At number 4, the Giants made a selection here. Everybody figured they were going to take a tackle here or Isaiah Simmons, but they took a tackle, but not the tackle everybody was expecting. They went ahead and took Andrew Thomas, offensive tackle from Georgia. Obviously, Andrew is one of the top 1 tier tackles in this draft. Obviously, taking him, the Giants had every tackle on the board and decided to go with him. They think he's the guy moving forward. Him to protect, Daniel Jones's blind side. Obviously, this is going to be very interesting. Also, this is big for Saquon Barkley, just to improve the offensive line in that regard. So I think that was a very good pick for the New York Giants to improve their line. Obviously, Dave Gettleman's a guy who loves offensive linemen, and obviously he wants to build that part. That's why I think a lot of people were kind of all over the place with this pick, because people thought Thomas wasn't the best tackle available, but they went with the pick. So maybe they feel like he's what they need more personally in New York, and he fits what they want to do. Like I said, since he's a top 4 tackle and a top 1 tier tackle, it's not he can't play. It's just, could you have gotten maybe a better one of the tier 1s potentially? At number 5, this was where everybody really got their intrigue. Obviously Miami and Tua has been in the books a lot. A lot of people, they talking about who would they go with, who would they select, who would they potentially choose to be their franchise quarterback moving forward. And Miami has decided to go with Tua. They have completely fooled everybody in the media with all these smoke screens. They completely play the media like fools. Great job to Miami. Chris Greer is a genius in that. They got the guy they wanted, which was Tua Tagovailoa. They call him the left-handed Drew Brees. They expect him to be a Pro Bowl quarterback. Now one of the big questions is this. I think one of the questions they have is, will Tua start right away? I don't think so, especially with the short off season. I think Ryan Fitzpatrick will start because he knows the offense already. But I think this was a great pick. They needed a guy. I think everybody was talking about what happened with Miami with Drew Brees, and I think they didn't want to make that same mistake again here. So good pick by Miami. Obviously at number 6, Los Angeles then took the next team, the next quarterback available, Justin Herbert. And, obviously this is a guy who now they look at as a guy who's going to get them to where they want to go in the future, which is to the top of the food chain. And I think we'll have to see if Justin Herbert starts week 1. Again, depends on the offseason. My broadcast partner, Ethan, he's probably going to believe he's going to start week 1 just because he feels like Tyrod Taylor isn't that great of a quarterback. But I think Justin Herbert might start the season on the bench because of the lack of offseason that he gets. But we'll have to see. I would think at some point, though, he does play. And I think that's going to be very interesting to see what happens moving forward. and just let Tyrod run the ship until he is ready to play. At number 7, Derrick Brown, obviously the best defensive tackle in this draft, an elite defensive tackle. Carolina went ahead and picked him up. And so with him, he's gonna add an interior pass rush and an interior run stopping to Carolina. Obviously in this division against Brady, Ryan, and Brice, it's important to make sure you get your defensive line stacked up with a lot of talent. And I think this was a very good pick for them to pick up a guy like this and to go out there and compete and play at a high level and, do what they got to do out there on both sides. So, this was a good pick for them, Like I said, he's a guy who was touted as the best defensive tackle in this draft. So he's expected to come out there and play the best out of all the defensive tackles in the draft. Arizona Cardinals picked up Isaiah Simmons. Obviously, this was a no-brainer for the Cardinals. Some people wondered where he was going to land up. He went with the Cardinals. Now, obviously, the next question is where's his position, because he can play every position on the defense. So, obviously, that's going to be the biggest question for Isaiah Simmons. Where does he play? Where do you line him up at linebacker, safety, nickel corner, D-line? He can play it all. Obviously, with the Cardinals being one of the worst defenses in the league last year, bringing a guy so versatile can help them adjust to maybe with certain packages where you want to put him, and so you feel like you can always get your best 11 guys in every package out there on the field. At number 9, C.J. Henderson, the second best corner in this draft, I think definitively in everybody's mind, from Florida. Obviously, that was their top need after trading away Jalen Ramsey and A.J. Bouye. And I think that's going to be, a pick that, like I said, Jacksonville needed to make. They wanted to make sure they get their secondary, reformed. They're getting a little younger. And hopefully, that he can come in and contribute right away. Probably will start day 1 for the Jaguars. So for me, it will be very, very interesting to see what happens moving forward. It will be very, very interesting for me to see what happens moving forward. And so I think it should be definitely interesting to see what happens in the long term, what happens with him. And then at number 10, to round out the top 10, Jarrett Willis Jr. A little surprising that they were able to fall down, but luckily the Browns needed a tackle to protect Baker Mayfield. They signed one in Jack Conklin. Now they got their left tackle in Jarrett Willis. Now they're going to have the 2 tackles protecting Baker Mayfield. This should put Baker Mayfield in a great position to be at his best from a protection on the offensive line standpoint. This also should help Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt with their, being able to run the football. And this is a pick that just shows that Andrew Berry definitely believes that it's important that we got to make sure that these tackles can protect our guy and really see if Baker can be our guy, or else we got to look at maybe getting a replacement next year's NFL draft if you're the Cleveland Browns. So obviously that was your top 10. Obviously there were surprises really. Like I said, outside of Andrew Thomas being one of the picks, no surprise really. It was pretty much what everybody expected. No trades happened, so maybe that surprised a little bit of people, but that was pretty much how the first 10 picks in the NFL draft went. Obviously watching it in this new format was very interesting, I would say. But, they do everything they can to make it exciting for everybody who watches it. So that's very fantastic. So coming up next in the next segment, we're going to discuss picks 11 through 21. So that's what we're going to discuss next and I'll give my opinion on all those picks moving forward right here on the podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Yes, sir. Welcome back to the GSMC Football Podcast. Last segment, we talked about the first 10 picks in the NFL Draft, 1 through 10. I gave my breakdown on all the players. If you forget the major highlights, Burrow goes number 1, Chase Young goes number 2, Tua goes number 5. Those are the big ones. Obviously, everybody, and Herbert goes 6, obviously, because everybody knows those are the big players, the players that have the most attention on them. throughout this entire draft process, and so every team, you could basically say in the top 10, got their guy. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens moving forward with everybody involved and see what ends up being, you know, just the future of what happens with all these guys. Obviously, it's a great day for a lot of guys, a lot of kids. Obviously, the draft coverage could be continued tomorrow, rounds 2 and 3. Like I said, I'm sure Monday me and Ethan will go ahead and give you an NFL draft recap show. So I'm sure that'll be probably the most exciting thing on all of the websites that have podcasts, our opinion. But now we're going to get into picks 11 through 21. And at pick 11, the Jets picked up a surprise. Again, kind of like Andrew Thomas with the Giants. Not technically the best tackle right there, but at the same time, still one of the top tackles. So they pick up Makari Becton, obviously a guy who's very athletic at 5'10", he's a mountain of a man, big man. Obviously his biggest thing sometimes is that, you know, his weight issues, you know, because remember when he came in, he was about 394. He's down to 350, I believe, or 360 now. Obviously, that's going to be big for them to make sure he keeps his weight down. You don't want your offensive lineman to get too overweight. That could affect his play, stamina, and his conditioning on the field. So obviously, you don't want him getting too heavy, but he's a mountain of a man, has potential to be probably one of the best tackles in the league one day. The Las Vegas Raiders went with a typical Al Davis move and selected Henry Ruggs III. Obviously, he is probably the fastest receiver in this draft. This man can run out the gym, can outrun anybody in the league. Listen, stat I learned at the info draft tonight, at least 25% of his catches were touchdowns. So clearly this man is a walking touchdown. And this man really is a great guy. Absolutely fantastic individual. And so, you know, I think that's what helps him be so great to me. Obviously, this is, like I said, he may not be as polished as a route runner or as a pass catcher, but he definitely can make big plays. He will have to be more physical coming off the line of scrimmage, obviously being a smaller guy, but I think this is a guy who can make big plays for Derek Carr or Marcus Mariota, whoever the quarterback of the Las Vegas Raiders are coming out. At number 13, we had a trade. San Francisco traded the pick they got from the Colts to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to pick up Tristan Wirfs, obviously to protect Tom Brady. And listen, he was considered probably one of the best tackles, if not the best tackle in this draft. So clearly with this being made, they clearly believe this man is the GOAT moving forward. And this man's going to protect Tom Brady going long term. And you know, they made a selection here to get the guy to, like I said, protect Tom Brady. And so it's going to be very interesting to see. This is definitely going to help Tom Brady in the vertical passing game, help create some time so he can get the ball down the field and give big plays to Mike Evans and Chris Godwin in certain situations. So that's obviously going to be very big moving forward. Now, obviously, San Francisco only traded back a spot to Tampa Bay, and Tampa Bay only flipped him a spot. So they still got the guy they wanted. Javon Kinlaw from defensive tackle from South Carolina. They traded DeForest Buckner, I believe, this offseason. Was it DeForest Buckner? I think it was DeForest Buckner. And so everybody was surprised, they traded their Pro Bowl defensive tackle, but they ended up getting another defensive tackle who is considered the second best in this draft. So they were basically able to get a cheaper, younger option with the potential to still be just as great. And so I think that was definitely a great move on San Francisco's part. Because sometimes you got to let go of expensive guys and still bring in guys who are cheaper and younger and can be as talented in your opinion. And you hope they develop into what you think they can be. Because obviously making a move like this can be a little dangerous, but something that you really think is going to benefit the team long term. And I understand this move completely making it. The Denver Broncos at 15 got their wide receiver to go with Courtland Sutton from last year. Jerry Jeudy, considered the best route runner in this year's NFL draft, considered the number one receiver in a lot of people's boards in the NFL draft. Obviously, this is going to help Drew Lock. Obviously, Drew Lock looks like he'll be the quarterback of the future. Now he has some two elite receivers and can come out there now and light it up. You know, this is a complete Drew Lock move right here. This is a complete Drew Lock move. So I think it's going to be big for them to do that. You know, and I think we'll have to see how Jerry Jeudy goes against some press coverage, but obviously, like I said, with his route running, we'll definitely see how good he is in the NFL going against some of the top guys in the league, and it's exciting to see him come out and play and basically be the best guy you can be. Now, at number 16, my Atlanta Falcons select A.J. Terrell. So, obviously, this thing is from Falcons Twitter. Falcons Twitter is very upset about this. They think about how he got, I guess, torched in the championship game and just feel like he's not that good, or they could have waited to take him instead of taking him at 16 because there were better players on the board. And so a lot of people are very mad. A lot of people want Dan Quinn and Thomas Dimitroff fired at this moment. So clearly this is about to be a very interesting season for the Atlanta Falcons because if these players don't work out or they don't lose, it's about to be a firestorm. But yeah, they selected A.J. Terrell. Obviously, they needed a corner. People think he could replace Marcus Trufant. Actually, Desmond Trufant. And they think he could be that guy. And then it has a lot of young corners. So it'll be interesting to see how they all put it together. The Dallas Cowboys get one of the best receivers in this year's draft with CeeDee Lamb. Now they have Michael Gallup, CeeDee Lamb, and Amari Cooper, one of the best receiving cores in the NFL. This is going to give Dak Prescott a plethora of weapons and big play guys. Obviously, this is going to make things very, very interesting. They may have never thought they could have got CeeDee Lamb, but now, obviously, Jerry Jones, seeing they have such a big play receiver at their spot, knowing we can add a guy for Dak Prescott to make more plays for, obviously a guy who can replace Randall Cobb. This is obviously a big deal, a big situation, a big chance for them to be successful moving forward, and I think this is a very good move for the Dallas Cowboys to be able to pick up this addition. Now, obviously, there may be questions with Dallas' defense, but obviously Jerry Jones says that we at least going to be able to outscore you with our weapons. So Miami's back on the board again at 18, and they get their tackle, Austin Jackson, USC. Listen, they needed offensive line help, and now they got a guy who can protect Tua. Listen, he's a guy who's very young, 20 years old. Some people call him a projection, a guy who has all the tools to be a Pro Bowl tackle, though. So it's just one of those things. It's just when are you comfortable getting him out there? When are you comfortable letting him play? That's going to be the biggest thing Miami has to decide. But I think he'll probably be very close to starting week 1, probably for the Miami Dolphins. At 19, David Arquette. This was a little bit of a surprising pick for some people. And people had a 3rd round grade on him, and they feel like this is just a reach. And so they feel like maybe they could have waited to get him, or they kind of got somebody else. But I guess they feel like they had to get him here. And so it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Obviously, this is their guy. Listen, we say these guys are reaches, but if he ends up being a Pro Bowl corner, we can't be mad at the pick. We just feel like you could have got a Pro Bowl corner in the 3rd round instead of having to potentially get a better player now and then get him still later. Same thing with the Falcons, basically, like play with the fans who like, we could have got him later. Why did we draft him now? Because that 3rd corner spot, people felt like there was a drop off, and all the corners could go 2nd and 3rd. So any other guys who was selected in the 1st was kind of like, okay, I guess. Jacksonville picked up Kavon Kason from LSU, considered the 2nd best pass rusher in this draft. Obviously, Jacksonville having him up there with Josh Allen from Kentucky they drafted last year. Again, 2 bookends that can get after the passer, and it's going to very much create a great pass rush from Jacksonville, trying to get back to Saxtonville. And so obviously that's going to be a fantastic thing for them to do to get themselves back in the contention to be great. And with the number 21 pick, the Philadelphia Eagles got their wide receiver, Jalen Reagor, one of the fastest guy who can do special teams all over the field, make a lot of big plays for Carson Wentz, a deep threat also. Obviously with the receiving core lacking some depth, obviously this is a pick they needed to make. Great job for the Philadelphia Eagles to get a guy here that can make plays all over the field and create a big play threat that Carson Wentz was supposed to have last year in Deshaun Jackson, but now we'll have this year, with Jalen Reagor. And so that's a good pick. Obviously, out of this whole selection, there's no surprises here. I mean, there were surprises with picks, but again, nothing crazy. One minor trade. It's just, another good day. And, I think it's just, like I said, draft at this point, it's like, okay, we're doing pretty well. Great presentation tonight, though. But yeah, so coming up next, we're going to finish out the rest of the draft. We're going to talk about the rest of the draft picks that were made and selected. So stay tuned right here for more analysis right here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Welcome back to the GSMC Football Podcast, baby. So we discussed picks 11 through 21. Now we're about to do 22 through 32. So obviously, we broke down, like I said, all the picks, and we're going to finish out our show by breaking down the last picks of the NFL draft. Obviously doing what we've been doing, which is discussing everything that we've seen, the decisions that were made, the picks that were made, and, like I said, draft coverage Monday with me and Ethan, give more of a recap on what we think of their drafts, of teams' drafts, and which teams got better, and etc. But like I said, I am just covering the first round tonight. And I'm with the number 22 selection. The Minnesota Vikings select one of my favorite players in this year's draft, not Jordan Jefferson. Not that LSU scrub. Okay, Justin Jefferson, the brother of Jordan Jefferson, LSU wide receiver. This is one of the deepest receiving classes in NFL history, right? And why do I keep saying Jordan? It's Justin. Justin Jefferson is a guy who has his rose from the ranks. Remember, he was a 0-star recruit coming out of high school. 0-star. Man didn't even have a star. This man was basically considered hot garbage coming out of school. And he made himself an elite receiver. And that's a story that you always can appreciate, a guy who was never expected to do much and be much. And he excelled. And he became that LSU and became Joe Burrow's favorite target at LSU. And so he definitely has earned this. He's earned all of this, and he deserves it. One of the best players, I'm telling you, one of the best players in the game, in my opinion, that in college football, and will probably be one of the best receivers at the next level. At number 23, the New England Patriots actually traded out of the first round and now gave it to the Los Angeles Chargers, which they went ahead and picked up a linebacker, Kenneth Murray. Obviously, they need a linebacker, and Kenneth Murray was one of the best linebackers on the board. Obviously, picking him gives them a guy who can, run sideline to sideline, play very well. Is a guy who does very, very well. And, it's a guy he can make big plays. And like I said, San Diego needed a linebacker. They got their guy. So I'm very impressed with what's going on. I'm happy that they got the guy that he needed to help man that's linebacking core, because that Chargers defense is still one of the most talented defenses in the NFL. Number 24, the Saints get Cesar Ruiz, the best center defensively in this draft. This isn't a sexy pick, but hey, they needed to do what they had to do. Now, they did draft the center last year at Eric McCoy. They could move him to right guard, or they could move Ruiz to right guard. But obviously, they added him to improve the offensive line for Drew Brees. Some people think they maybe should have went wide receiver, linebacker, edge rusher, but they seem to be like, let's get the offensive line 100% straight so Drew Brees is protected and he can be successful. At number 25, the San Francisco 49ers traded back up to get Brandon Ayuk from wide receiver from Arizona State. They traded up with the Minnesota Vikings. Obviously, Minnesota giving this up. He's, again, one of the top receivers in this draft, a playmaker. He's going to be the guy to replace Emmanuel Sanders. He's the guy they're going to expect him to come in there and play well and give them production right away so they can go out there and win a championship next year. Green Bay, and what some people consider the most surprising pick of this entire NFL draft, traded up with the Miami Dolphins to get Jordan Love. Aaron Rodgers' heir apparent. This has people shocked. This has people amazed. Obviously, everybody knows Aaron Rodgers has very publicly said, can you get me a wide receiver? And then they say, you know what, Aaron? We go get a quarterback. So people wondered, is Aaron Rodgers' days numbered? Are his days numbered? Could this be his last year? How long before Jordan Love takes advantage? It's very much questions that people are going to want to have answers to. Obviously, this was something people were thinking about, though. Could they think about trying to get the heir apparent to Aaron Rodgers? It's something that we didn't know if they were realistically going to do. But obviously making this selection shows, yes, we are very much open to replacing him. And if we feel like he can bring in something that we didn't have before, we're definitely going to go with it moving forward. So obviously this is a big deal that they got a guy like this. We have no idea how Aaron Rodgers is going to react. So it'll be interesting to see what comments he makes or what the relationship is like between them two when he gets to the Packers locker room and just is he kind of like how Favre was? You kind of remember Favre kind of was like, with Aaron. Will Aaron be that same way? We'll have to see. But the Seattle Seahawks went ahead and drafted Jordan Brooks, linebacker from Texas Tech. A dominating linebacker all over, you know what I'm saying, the field kind of linebacker. They had a chance to get Patrick Queen here, but I guess they feel like Jordan Brooks was the guy that they loved the most and was the guy they feel like fit what they wanted to do the most at the end of the day. So obviously they got their guy. At the end of the day with these guys, as long as they get their guy, you can't complain. They got their guy. So that's obviously a big deal for them to get the guy that they wanted to get at the end of the day. So we're going to have to see what happens with that. But obviously manning that linebacking corps and getting that situated. At number 28, Baltimore then went ahead and picked up Patrick McQueen. Obviously, middle linebacker was a glaring need because they lost C.J. Mosley, and so they were able to get a guy to replace C.J. Mosley now. And, you know, he's a very flexible linebacker, so it'll be interesting to see him manning that middle linebacking spot. Where the Ravens have always had great middle linebackers, from Ray Lewis to C.J. Mosley to now Patrick Queen. So it'll be interesting to see what he actually does when he gets out on the field for the Baltimore Ravens, as he, on a team that doesn't have many holes, can play well. Some people wonder if he's undersized, but because obviously Ray Lewis and Mosley were bigger guys. But I think this is the guy that, you know, is going to go out there and play his hardest. At number 29, Isaiah Wilson was selected. Obviously, this guy is probably to replace Jack Conklin at right tackle. Obviously, protect Ryan Tannehill. Obviously, you know, Wilson, he obviously is a raw guy, can develop. Some people think he should have stayed another year, even though he was already a first-round talent. But, you know, a guy that can come in for your franchise right away, play well, play at a high level, and just contribute and play at a good level and just win championships for you. You know, as an up-and-coming tackle in the league. At number 30, the Miami Dolphins selected Noah, don't know how to say his last name, that's all you're getting from me. And he was from Auburn. Obviously, this surprised a little bit of people because people thought maybe this could be a running back, maybe another offensive lineman. Obviously, if you look at Miami, what they're trying to do, they're obviously a man-to-man team, and this is a man-to-man corner. And they're going to have a man-to-man guys all across the way. And so I think that's going to be what they're thinking with this pick. Obviously, this is a guy who was a full wide receiver who turned corner. So obviously, he's a guy who still is a little raw at the corner position, but will probably be a nickel for him. A speedy guy, too, could also return kicks. So obviously, he has some added value with that for the Miami Dolphins. At number 31, Minnesota got Jeff Gladney, the other corner from TCU, a guy who people were saying he was rising off the draft charts. Obviously, Minnesota needed a corner, especially letting Xavier Rhodes go this offseason, needing a guy to replace him, needing a guy to come in there and hopefully maybe he can be their new number one guy. Obviously, they still have Trey Waynes, so we'll have to see what actually happens with the Minnesota secondary, because that's obviously a big part of, you know, their success is the secondary play, as they kind of were disappointed by what they got last year. So obviously this will be a very interesting move moving forward. But they went up, got their guy, and now they have a guy that they feel like can, you know, start day one for them and play very well. And at number 32, to end the NFL draft, the Kansas City Chiefs selected Clyde Edwards-Helaire from LSU, the very versatile running back. Obviously, he was always kind of, even though they are better running backs in terms of rated in front of him, he was always a guy who people felt like he'd be the best value back in the draft. Because he can run, he can catch, he can throw, he can do everything for you. Very elusive, very shifty in space. This player fits what the Chiefs want to do. He fits completely what they want to do, and I think this will give them a running back that they need, that can make a lot of plays for them with Damian Williams, and basically give them what they need to be successful moving forward. And that was your 2020 NFL first round. I broke down all the people for you, and my thoughts on every pick on the first round. Like I said, tune in Monday or Tuesday when our show drops with me and Ethan as we discuss the NFL draft recap and as a whole. Like I said, great first night. A lot of people being happy, people making money tonight. So it's just great to see this happening. So Thank you for tuning into the GSMC Football Podcast. I'm your host, Brice Lewis. Don't forget to listen to our other amazing podcasts on this podcast network. And also, don't forget to subscribe or like any of our Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter posts anytime you have a chance. Thank you, and have a good day.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.